väl, vi reiser hem, vi kommer snart igen. Vind opp i rå, sett seilene til side, alt på den bølgeblå. Vi akter nå å stride. Far nå vel, vi reiser hem, vi kommer snart igen.
In 2008, the international lifestyle magazine Monocle claimed that Copenhagen is the best place to live in, the best city to live in. One of the first impressions a visitor has when coming to Copenhagen is that this city combines advantages of a big city and a place of business and those of a small town. Everything is available for pedestrians or cyclists. The historic center is not too large and not too noisy, and very agreeable to walk. As you can see, there are maybe even more bikes in Copenhagen than in Amsterdam, for instance. There aren't so many benches in Copenhagen like in Malmö, for instance, but if they are, they look really interesting. The bicycle lanes are visibly marked, and there are also other interesting facilitations for the inhabitants. The general administrative plan of the city is simple and logical. The city of Copenhagen is divided to historical center and the places, the districts, called simply Western District, Northern District, Nørrebro, Vesterbro. Recently also Swedish Malmö has adopted this pattern. Maybe it's because in the year 2000, a giant bridge at Öresund connected the Danish capital and the third greatest city of Sweden, both economically and culturally. In no other Western European city, not even in Amsterdam, have I seen bigger number of national flags than in Copenhagen. This seems to be an effect of a small nation phenomenon with local economic patriotism, which is also very visible here. Smaller nations want to stay visible, that's why they hang so many flags. On the other hand, the Danish economy is not so much connected with the European one in general. To a visible extent, Danish economy is separated from the global trends and the global market. This is one of the reasons why Copenhagen and all Denmark are doing relatively well in the global economic crisis we face today. Copenhagen is an expensive city, especially important products are very expensive. But several local products can be really cheap. Very expensive is also transportation, especially metro. Copenhagen is an open, liberal city. We can observe it at any time. For instance, we have here a small exposition of faces of people of various race and descent. And this is a question if you can really state if someone is white or or black. So this is a very popular topic nowadays. Because, for instance, British comedian Stephen Fry has talked with one of Ghana's minister about Obama, and he was talking that Obama is the first black president of the United States. And the Ghana's minister told him that he would be, if he stayed in Ghana as a teenager, he would be maybe the first white president in Ghana. So what it really means to be white or black, and those posters relate to this topic. These flags are the mark of the International Day of the fight for equal rights for homosexuals. This also refers to some kind of social taboo. We can only guess if it says some trace of some feminist manifestation. It seems that assimilation of immigrants, including Muslim ones, in Copenhagen goes relatively smooth. There are no visible ghettos, just ethnically diverse districts like Nørrebro. Huge parts of Copenhagen history is really unique. The city was located in the 10th or 11th century as a marine village and was intercepted about 1160 by the Bishop of Roskilde. Absalon, the Bishop of Roskilde, was an extraordinary figure. Here we have him depicted as a warrior. He was indeed more a combination of a warrior and an entrepreneur than a typical dull clergyman. In 1249 and in 1369, the German Hansa has destroyed Copenhagen. So in 1416 it became a royal city, to be safe. The newest trends in the 16th century Copenhagen wasn't always welcome. For instance, in 1536 the townsmen reluctantly accepted Lutheranism as a religion. But in the 17th century the whole course of history, the whole tendency is reversed. Now Copenhagen is setting trends. King Christian IV, who ruled from 1588 to 1648, made Copenhagen a modern and powerful city. In 1619 he created the district of Christianshavn. He ordered to build a Trinity Church, the Rosenborg Palace, and the Stock Exchange Market, one of the first in the Western world. He was also the first king to die in Copenhagen, in the Rosenborg Palace he built. The rule of Frederick III from 1648 to 1670 was a time of a great cultural development. He collected books and created the first royal library. It was also a time when the people of Copenhagen could demonstrate their patriotism. For instance, the mayor Hans Nansen in 1658 have organized the defense against the Swedes, against the Swedish invasion. And thanks to its defense, the city was able to wait for the Dutch reinforcements. Thanks to the victory against the Swedes, Frederick III was able to make Denmark an absolute monarchy and say goodbye to the long reign of anarchistic barons. Also, Frederick III ordered to create the most picturesque and popular today place in Copenhagen, that is Nyhavn, the new harbor. It was actually built by the Swedish prisoners of war. During the reign of Christian V, the Kongens Nytorv, the new place, new market, was created with Charlottenburg and Trot Palace, which is today the French embassy. In 1675, Niels Juel became commander-in-chief of the Danish royal fleet, and he made this fleet so powerful that it was necessary for the British during the Napoleonic Wars to destroy it, because otherwise it could be used against England. Sometimes even today it provokes some anti-British sentiments in Copenhagen. During the reign of Frederick IV, that is years from 1699 to 1730, it was a happy town of theatre, of many fests, but also a time of tragedies like the plague of 1711 and the Great Fire of Copenhagen in 1728. This great fire explains why there are not so many buildings in Copenhagen older than 18th century buildings. The reign of Christian VI, it was the reign of pietism, but also a reign of some scientific progress. He created the Royal Scientific Society, for instance. The reign of Frederick V was the time of debauchery, but also the time of some artistic progress. He has created the Kunstakademi. Both Christian VI and Frederick V have introduced Baroque style to the city. The famous Danish architect Nikolai Eigtved has built many Baroque buildings like Marble Church, the Marmorkirken, or the Amalienborg Palace, which was a complex of some aristocratic buildings, aristocratic houses, then bought by the monarchy, and today is the main royal palace. The first half of the 18th century is also the time of Ludwig Holberg, who is very frequently named as the father of Danish theatre. Holberg criticized many elements of his contemporary social lifestyle, like for instance the vain titles of aristocracy and the vanity of aristocracy. He was not so critical about the clergy because he was partly dependent on the clergy in a financial and administrative way. The long reign of Christian VII, the years 1766 to 1808, is most known from the short period of several months in 1772, which was the reign of his enlightened minister, the so-called dictatorship of Johann Struensee. Struensee was a German physician, and he also had an affair with the queen. But he has introduced several liberal elements to the political system of Denmark. He has abolished the most cruel elements of the feudal system. He also created hospitals for the orphans and also for the prostitutes, and he was criticized by the conservative for it because they were of an opinion that he encourages prostitution in that way, that they are not punished and they should be punished before the face of the Lord and so on. But he was thinking like a modern man. Of course, this affair with the queen has caused his removal and death. But many of his regulations stayed valid and survived him. Here we can see the Palace of the Justice, that is the Domhuset, built in the years 1803-1815, and who served as the site of the Supreme Court from 1815 to 1905, and now is the city court. On the front side we can see the script, Met lov skal man land bygge. You should build a country, a nation, with the law. This is the quote for Codex Holmiensis from the 13th century, the oldest legal code of Denmark. The 19th century for Copenhagen was the time of great advancement both in arts and science. It's a time of Hans Christian Ørsted, who has published many works on electromagnetism, also of another Hans Christian Andersen, of course, the author of many fables and many tales. It's also a time of Søren Kierkegaard, the great philosopher, and it's also the time when the famous Carlsberg brewery started by the family of Jacobsen in 1847. Søren Kierkegaard is very often perceived as the pre-father of existentialism. In the time of the dominance of Hegelism, with all these theses and antitheses and syntheses, he has created the philosophy of finity and infinity and existential questions. The 19th century is also the time of Nikolai Friedrich Grundtvig, who lived in years 1780 to 1872. He was a Lutheran minister, and he was for the democratic reform of the political system of Denmark. He was also a great supporter of women's suffrage, of women's right to vote, which is interesting. He was also for getting rid of all Catholic elements in the Lutheran liturgy and learning. He was criticized for some of his progressive thoughts and was forced to give up his position as a minister in 1826. From that time on, he worked only as a man of letters, as a democratic thinker. his ideas inspire the Lutheran Church of Denmark even today. So we can say that Grundtvig is the father of the Lutheran liberalism, or the liberal Lutheranism. In the mid-19th century, it was, of course, as in other parts of Europe, a great call for democratic reform, for constitutional monarchy, or democracy, or republic. In 1843, Christian VIII has built Tivoli, the park of amusement, for the people, not reportedly not to think so much about the reform. But the next monarch, Frederick VII, has agreed to constitutional monarchy. Today Denmark is an exemplary democracy, exemplary democratic republic, with only one house in parliament. During World War I, Denmark has traded with both sides of the conflict, but of course the war caused some problems with supplies, especially with petrol and other resources. The Danes and the Danish Lutheran Church are very well known due to their exemplary behavior during the World War II and the German occupation. In autumn 1944, they helped almost the whole population of Jewish population of Copenhagen to move to neutral Sweden. It was all organized by the Danish people and the Danish Lutheran Church. It's a great positive contrast to the behavior of the German Lutheran and Catholic churches during World War II in relation to the Holocaust. During World War II, the Danish king Christian X, unlike the kings of the Netherlands and Norway, stayed in the country during the German occupation. That's why Hitler tried to persuade the monarch to support his politics, but without any effect, of course. After World War II, the next monarch, Frederick IX, who died in 1972, has introduced some elements of social liberal style on the court, on the royal court. Today's monarch, the Queen Margaret II, is very well known as the most liberal and progressive king or queen in Europe. She has several degrees, among others in archaeology and economy, but she's very humble and easygoing. It's possible to encounter her during making shopping in the street. That's why over 80% of Danish population supports the Queen and the monarchy. In 1971, the very special commune, a city within the city, was created. It's called Christiania. It was created in the place where previously was a military harbor. And Christiania has its own law. Of course, to some extent they must accept the law of the general law of Denmark, but to the huge extent they govern themselves. It's the only one experiment on that scale with hippie communes in Europe. Is there something like a Danish way of thinking? Yes, I think it is. It could be perhaps the combination of progressivism with the idea of a complementary state of things, which linked, for instance, Niels Bohr to Grundtvig and Søren Kierkegaard. In every part of Copenhagen you can see actual care about men's and women's health and well-being. It's very highly visible. It's an ideal place to work and also ideal place to relax. It's a capital of a country and in the same time, to some extent, a spa.